Looks like we're in, Alex.
Hey there, Jamon. Everybody, welcome to this post-game edition of the Aftershock after San Jose's scoreless draw with Austin FC after what was, I think, a solid performance from the Quakes, Jamon. It's just me and you tonight on the show. So I am interested to hear your thoughts. There were obviously a lot of tactical changes from Matias Almeyda after the international break. And I think you had predicted some of them. So I'm going to let you give yourself a pat on the back there, Jim, and take it away.
Yeah, in case people missed it, I posted an article. I picked the prime spot to get people to pay attention before a game and went with the 7 p.m. release day before the game of an article last night. So if you didn't catch it and you're a Quakes Epicenter patron, good to kind of use it and kind of reflect back on what you just saw and kind of what I had put out there. But my recommendation was really to look at going 3 in the back, and specifically I had said a 3-4-3. Now that's not quite what we saw tonight. I actually felt that Matias would not give up his wingers, that he would give up his enganche in order to do it. Turns out he flipped the script on me. He kept Shofis on as the 10, went with the 2 forwards, so effectively a 3-5-2, and asked a lot of the wingbacks. And we really saw that took a toll at the end of the game. Paul Marie having to go out from cramping. The whole sideline on the right had to be covered by Christian Espinoza. It really asked a lot, I felt, of different people in the team, and the game got very stretched vertically in the first half. Now, you and I had kind of been in the Quakes Epicenter patron chat saying, hey, that's actually kind of good for the Quakes overall to see a game kind of get that stretched vertically. They were better suited to be able to take advantage of it. But the toll in the second half, I felt like, was a bit, almost too much. But it, really interesting tactical and positional flexibility as he kind of shifted from that 3 in the back to his usual 4 in the back toward the end of the game when the substitutes came on. So, yeah, it got really interesting. Both teams had their opportunities, a lot of shots. I thought the Quakes were a little bit more too much shots from outside the box. I wanted to see a little bit more connectivity in the box. We didn't quite get it. But for a first game in over 2.5 weeks, it wasn't terrible. And it was quite interesting just because of the new wrinkles that we saw. And I think that's worth asking Matias what he felt about what he asked of the team tonight and how it went, and could we see it again? And hopefully we'll get some insight in the post-game press conference here. Alex, how did you feel it went from your perspective?
I think the important piece was that they stopped the 4-game slide. They had lost their last 4 matches before the break. And I think it was pretty obvious that they needed to change something. And so I'm all here for this new experiment with the 3 at the back. I thought it was a solid performance. I think the verticality, sort of the openness of the game suited them. They're almost like chaos merchants. The more chaotic, the more unpredictable it is. They thrive in those situations. And I think that they had a ton of opportunities to win it tonight. I thought Austin's goalkeeper had a couple outstanding saves. And if San Jose's finishing in the final third is a little bit better, they definitely come away from that game with 3 points. Now, I don't think it has to be a permanent change. You saw towards the end of the game there was a lot of sort of tactical flexibility and fluidity. So I think that this was a great experiment, another sort of wrinkle and another option that Matias Almeyda has. I don't necessarily think it has to be a permanent change, but obviously this was the big thing that they worked on over the international break. We talked to Matias in his midweek press conference last week, and he was sort of coy about what they were working on in the break. When I asked him, I was like, "So, Matias, you guys gonna make any changes? What are you working on?" And he wasn't very forthcoming. But this was obviously sort of the ace card that he played, the new change, going 3 at the back. And I'm a little worried about Judson in the right center back role. He was obviously the big addition coming into the lineup. He had missed so much of the first part of the season because of a lack of fitness. And the thinking is, well, how do you get him, Jackson Ewell, and Eric Hermetti on the field at the same time? And the answer that Matias came up with was you put Judson in the center back role, and that was something that he'd actually been talking about for a long time. He'd been mentioning how Judson can also play center back, can also play right back, and that's where we saw him tonight. And I think he did a good job of sort of sweeping up back there, claiming a lot of loose balls, and stopping counterattacks. 1v1, he looked a little shaky. He gotten beat a couple times by Austin's wingers, and so that is something that I'm watching out for, especially going forward. They're going to be quite tired heading into next week because of all the sort of strain that this system puts on the wingbacks, as you say, Jamon. And so we'll see. I'm not sure if this is going to be a permanent change from Almeyda or not.
Yeah, and we have there's, by the way, a lot of great comments already, and I'm watching the chat here. KM J Vet there says Judson was way better once out of that role, and really in my article I proposed that he take the center spot, and I still stick with that. I do think that if you switch him and Flo, that you get a more natural role for Judson. Flo's is a little bit better vertical 1v1. You want Judson more going side to side. You want him to kind of be the free and give him the opportunity to figure out where to stop the counterattacks. And one of the advantages of going with a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 or something like that for the Quakes is there are various weaknesses defensively in those types of systems, and you have to, most coaches move out of those and into something more like a 4-4-2, and you end up having to go defensively because of those weaknesses. The Quakes don't have to deal with that because they got their man marking style. Like, it asks nothing different of the Quakes to do do a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 or anything like that, because they just pick up where they left off. The question is, who's the free and where do they start positioning? And to me, it felt like asking Judson to kind of go 1v1 vertically just didn't suit his strengths. I would, if I saw this again, I feel like I had the better suggestion, to be quite honest, in asking Judson to go central and let Flo go to the right. But it was interesting, and there was so much in the game. The Quakes did pick up yellow cards early, and I believe Remedi is going to have to miss the next game. If I caught that right, I need to double check that, but I believe he's out for the next game because of now yellow card accumulation. That means we're going to see Judson again, probably back into his natural role. Good chance we see Almeyda go back to the kind of the 4-2-1-3 formation, probably anyway, just because of what he's going to have to deal with no Remedi in there. It'll be interesting to see kind of how that goes, going forward. And the fitness level of Judson, he did look pretty tired by the end of the game, quite a bit, and I think he's still getting into his 90-minute fitness.
I mean, the other option, Jamon, is that you could put Judson back in the midfield and play Tanner Beeson at center back. He's another center back of, I think, starting quality who's impressed a lot of people this season, who could step into that back line. Just as a reminder to everybody, we're going to be speaking with Matias Almeyda in the post-match press conference very shortly. So we'll get to bounce all of these tactical ideas off of him and hear his thoughts about the new 3-4-1-2 system. And in addition, we'll be speaking to two players. I'm not sure if we know who they are yet. Actually, we do. They will be JT Marcinkowski and Oswaldo Alanis. So those are the two players we're going to be speaking with in just a little bit. And then the other thing I'm seeing here in the comments, Jamon, is questions about Cade Cowell. He didn't start today. He had been starting before the break. He comes on. I think he has a couple of dangerous runs in behind maybe, but doesn't really do anything with them. He doesn't, test the goalkeeper. And I think there's some frustration in the comments here. Somebody saying Cade has been so bad lately. Is it tiredness, no confidence? What's going on, Jamon? What do you think?
Well, I don't think he was in a real position to get a lot of service tonight. I felt like Cade is going to thrive when the team has that width, and because the game was so stretched vertically, and you couldn't kind of go away from Cade in order to be able to create space for him. He was kind of put in positions where if they could play a ball over the top and he could chase it down, and then hopefully he can create something out of nothing. And And, I felt that Austin did a really good job of kind of collapsing pretty quickly whenever Cade got on the ball and slowing him down. I don't feel like the situation tonight was what would work best for Cade to go forward with. And I felt, again, this goes back to the article a bit, not to push that too much here, but I had proposed the 3-4-3 primarily so that you could get kind of that vertical stretching from Cade up top. When Matias goes to the 3-5-2 and you get two forwards up top, I know people really don't care for Andy Rios right now. I completely get it. He certainly is significantly underperforming. But if you're in Matias's shoes and you're rolling out a new formation, you kind of want the veterans on the field. And I kind of get that element of it. And also in the 3-5-2, you need those forwards who can kind of work together. And Rios and Wando have worked together a bit more. So I get it. I don't like it. I think the fans don't like it. But I get it. And I think we're going to get Matias Almeyda here coming up here pretty soon. We're hearing testing the microphone, almost like producers in our ear here, Alex.
Exactly. And look, I think, as you say, Matias opted for Rios probably for defensive reasons, because I think that he is much better at, running that front line and sort of doing the defensive work of the forwards and initiating the press. But going forward, he's just incredibly frustrating. I think he had, multiple moments in the final third today, chances that he just squandered. The problem is Cade isn't really performing well either. I think, he had a couple outstanding finishes earlier this season, but I think he's just kind of lost that confidence. Earlier in the season, he was taking shots from all over the field. We're not really seeing that much. In the last couple games. I think he's sort of hesitating on the ball and second guessing himself, especially his left foot. He had one particular opportunity tonight on his left foot. He had I think a pretty wide open goal, but he doesn't really trust his left foot yet. I don't think that's, I think, one of the weak points in his game. And so he cut it back onto the right foot and it sort of squandered the opportunity. So I think, this is just a natural part of Cade's development in Cade's progression. And he's going to get more minutes. He's going to have more opportunities this season. And maybe he doesn't have a sort of nonstop all-star phenomenal rise like Alphonso Davies did, but he's going to develop into a really strong player in his own right, I think. And so I see a game like tonight as sort of a natural sort of step in his development. But it does put, I think, Matias in a tough spot in terms of where you're going to find goals. I think this is another game now where the Quakes go scoreless. They have one goal in their last 5 games, and that's just not good enough. And I guess the one bright spot in the attack tonight, I would have to say, was Christian Espinosa. I thought this new formation, having him at wingback, freed up a lot of space for him to down that right side, because defensively Austin would have had to send their winger back to track him and mark him. And so he was sort of found himself between Austin's winger and fullback and had space to drive at those players. I think he hit the post in the first half with a right-footed shot. He was able to cut in onto his left foot a couple of times. I think getting the ball to Christian Espinosa and having, him run down the line and take shots is a pretty good strategy for the Quakes. That's, getting back to one of the things that made them, quite good last year and quite good in 2019. So that was definitely the bright spot for me, was Christian Espinosa running that line on the right side of it. And now I believe we are going to go to Matias Almeyda in the post-match press conference.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. On tonight's scoreless draw, we are joined by head coach Matias Almeyda.
Start by taking a few questions in English, followed by a couple more in Spanish with no translation. Let's go ahead and get started with Alex Morgan.
Unmuted.
Hi, Matias. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's good to see you.
Hi, Alex.
Tonight you played with, I think, a little bit of a different setup. You had 3 center backs with Judson and Flo and Alanis. I'm curious what prompted you to make that change and how you think that new setup worked tonight.
Hoy se vio un esquema un poco diferente con 3 centrales. Está curioso por qué cambiaste el sistema y cómo pensás que funcionó.
Bueno, en principio, buenas noches a todos.
Start, good evening to everybody.
Sí, en la semana cuando me preguntaban qué habíamos entrenado,
Throughout the week, we were asked what we've been working on.
este tiempo que estuvo parado, entrenamos este método de jugar, esta estrategia.
These days, these last couple weeks where we didn't have games, we've been practicing this style of playing, this method,
Porque consideraba que este partido había que jugarlo así.
because we thought that this game we should play like this.
Quedé muy contento.
I'm very happy with it.
Creo que los chicos hicieron un gran esfuerzo
I think the guys made a huge effort,
y por intermedio de este sistema tuvimos acciones claras de contragolpe de gol.
and through this system, we had clear counter-attacking opportunities.
Es verdad que nos sigue faltando ese tramito final,
It's true that we're missing that little final phase,
pero bueno, hay que seguir trabajando en ese aspecto, pero después fueron grandes intérpretes.
we have to keep working on that, but after that, they were great interpreters.
Thank you, Matias. Next question comes from Alicia Rodriguez.
Thank you. Matias, just to piggyback off of what you said about attack, you guys have scored 1 goal in 5 games. I mean, is it a matter of just mostly bad luck? You've been getting a lot of looks, but they're just not going in right now. Do you need like a fluke goal or something to kind of get the team back on track at this point? Or do you think that there's something that you can kind of pinpoint in training?
En los últimos partidos, en los últimos 5, el equipo solamente convirtió un gol, pero tuvo sus oportunidades. Si vos pensás que no pudo meter el gol por mala suerte, tal vez necesitas un gol así medio de suerte para quebrar esa racha. Si pensás que es algo así de mala suerte o es algo que hay que seguir entrenando.
No creo en la suerte o la mala suerte.
I don't believe in luck or bad luck.
Creo en el trabajo y en la capacidad de cada uno de los jugadores.
I believe in work and all the players' capacities.
Cuando jugaba al fútbol era muy consciente de mis propias limitaciones
When I played, I was very aware of my own limitations,
y fueron las que me permitieron hacer una carrera porque trabajaba para mejorar.
and those are the ones that allowed me to have a career because I would work on them to improve.
Eso es lo que busco en cada uno de ellos.
That's what I look for in all of them.
Y bueno, en algún momento esto tiene que cambiar.
And at some moments, it's going to have to change.
Pero era importante cortar la racha de derrotas,
But it was important to end that losing streak.
pero sobre todo volvimos a ver un San José combativo, un San José con control de juego,
We went back to seeing a combative San Jose that was controlling the game,
un San José que vino a ser protagonista de esta fiesta.
and a San Jose who came to be a main character in this party.
Thank you, Matias. Next question from Jamon Moore.
Hi, Coach. Good evening. Congratulations on the road point. It was a very enjoyable game to watch, I think, with the changes that you implemented. Obviously didn't have the goal in it. It also felt that the game got stretched more vertically than you would typically play and maybe lost a bit of width as a result of that in the first half. It seemed to maybe have an effect on the players in the second half in terms of their ability to get up and down. And it looked like when you came out in the second half that you tried to possess the ball a bit more. Did the game get more vertically stretched than you wanted in the first half, or was that your intention for tonight? Thank you.
Creo que fue un partido que disfrutó mucho. Se pareció que con este cambio de sistema, que el equipo jugó un poco más vertical, no tan abierto como antes. Pregunta es si el partido se estiró un poco más verticalmente el primer tiempo de que vos tenías planeado, y también pareció que en el segundo tiempo el equipo salió controlando un poco más, y es algo también que se habló.
Sí, el segundo tiempo, bueno, de hecho modificamos el sistema otra vez.
In the second half, we changed our system again,
Y ahí se provocaron más acciones de gol.
and there we had more chances.
Creo que el gran esfuerzo que habían hecho el primer tiempo en cambiar de posiciones,
I think the huge effort that they made in the first half to change positions,
eso también tiene un riesgo que yo sé que los jugadores se van a cansar.
that has a risk, and I know the players are going to get tired.
Por eso les agradezco el esfuerzo que hicieron.
That's why I thank them for the effort that they made.
Pero repito, interpretaba que este partido había que jugarlo así.
And Barpi, they understood that they had to play this game this way.
Porque dentro de las derrotas que habíamos tenido, me miré bastante para adentro
Because within the losses that we had, I looked inward quite a bit,
y sentía que había que provocar algún tipo de cambio efectivo.
And I felt that I had to make some effective change.
Bueno, creo que el cambio fue efectivo.
And I think the change was effective.
Quiero felicitar a la gente de Austin.
I wanted to congratulate the people of Austin.
Realmente fue un espectáculo de fútbol.
It really was a spectacle of football.
Yo disfruté de ver este partido.
I enjoyed watching this game.
Disfruté de ser parte de este juego.
I enjoyed being a part of this game.
Y me gustó mucho las instalaciones.
And I really liked the facilities.
Me gustó cómo acompañó a su gente.
I liked how the fans accompanied them.
Fue un día de felicidad.
It was a day of happiness.
De fútbol.
Of football.
Que viva este fútbol.
Long live this football.
Thank you, Matias. We're going to switch over to our Spanish portion now, starting with Carlos Ramirez.
Matías, un fuerte abrazo. Carlos Mauricio Ramírez de Telemundo, ¿cómo te va?
Un abrazo, Carlos, ¿cómo estás?
Bien. Matías, las condiciones climáticas, el calor, ¿cuánto afectó para la planificación de este partido y cuán satisfecho estás con la forma en que se maneja en la liga el tema de hidratación, los cambios y cómo eso te permite a ti como entrenador afectar el partido con casi que lo que será un tiempo muerto en baloncesto, ¿no? Que no se suele tener en el fútbol. ¿Cómo sientes que afectó eso el partido?
No, yo creo que eso está bien porque el calor obviamente para los dos equipos, hay un equipo que está más acostumbrado que otro, es normal, pero bueno, es lo lindo que tiene esta liga, que jugás en escenarios diferentes, de repente te toca jugar una cancha de sintético, donde el pique del balón no es el mismo, pasás a un lugar donde hace más frío, otro donde llueve, otros donde hay mucha humedad, y bueno, los futbolistas profesionales se adaptan a diferentes estados climáticos. Y con respecto a que se pare, no sé si a los 30 minutos, ¿no? Está bien, los jugadores son seres humanos y inclusive el arbitraje también tiene que hidratarse porque digamos que el calor y esa intensidad del partido hace que los jugadores se deshidraten.
Thank you, Matias. We're going to take two more questions, starting with Arch Bell.
Muchas gracias. Buenas noches, profe. Pues aquí acá en Austin, la gente local esperaba mucho de su equipo, ya que fue el estreno, ¿no? de su nueva casa. ¿Crees que eso jugó a favor de San José, ya que San José solo tuvo que jugar en su partido, ¿no? Y jugar con más tranquilidad, con la cabeza fría y solo centrarse en el partido? ¿Eso jugó al favor de los Earthquakes en el partido, crees?
No, creo que lo más lindo que tiene el hecho de ser jugador de fútbol cuando entras a un terreno de juego y la cancha está llena. Eso es una motivación para todos. Si un jugador de fútbol siente presión porque la cancha está llena, seguramente su carrera será corta. Porque presión debe sentir, siempre digo lo mismo, un padre que no le puede dar de comer a un hijo. Esto es fiesta, es un espectáculo. Y nosotros lo jugamos como tal, tratando de ser competitivos y aislarnos de esta atmósfera positiva que tenían ellos. Creo que, pero benefició al fútbol. Creo que es un partido, el partido en sí fue bueno, fue un partido bien jugado por los dos equipos y el marco de la gente fue espectacular.
Thank you, Matias. And our final question comes from Salvador Perez.
Thank you. Hola, Matías, ¿cómo estás? Qué gusto saludarte. Salvador Pérez de México. Espero que estés bien.
Un abrazo.
Igualmente. Matías, yo quisiera hacerte dos preguntas. Si me permite la primera, ya hablabas un poco del escenario, de lo que fue Austin, de lo que fue la fiesta que se vivió hoy en el Q2 Stadium. ¿Sientes que cuestiones como estas hacían falta después de un 2020 tan complicado, un inicio, un 2021 complicado por el tema de la salud, por el tema de todo lo que se vivía con esta pandemia? Hoy esto era lo que se necesitaba, hoy este espectáculo era lo que se necesitaba. Y la segunda, si me permites, hoy cómo viste el trabajo de Javier, el trabajo de Carlos, por ahí que Carlos entra en el segundo tiempo y por ahí casi anota un golazo, pero cómo viste todo ello. Gracias, Matías.
Bueno, la primera creo que es emocionante de ver que la gente volvió dentro de esta pandemia que sigue, hago una vida bastante normal. Yo con respecto a esta pandemia me ha dejado un gran dolor, como todos saben, el fallecimiento de mi padre, y hoy ver que la gente pudo disfrutar de un espectáculo, de vivir como vivíamos antes, creo que es bueno para la gente y esto hace de un marco espectacular para el fútbol. Desde ese lugar lo noto, lo veo positivo, me gustó y agradecido a la gente aquella que se ha vacunado, ¿no? Porque de hecho se ha liberado todo por la cantidad de vacunas que se han dado. Y esto nos permite volver a sentir la vida que llevábamos normalmente. La segunda lo vi bien. Javier está haciendo un gran esfuerzo, entrenándose casi todos los días doble turno. Nunca lo había visto así. Esta liga es muy dinámica, es muy rápida y sus toques son toques diferentes. Cada vez que toca el balón, él lo toca de una manera linda, una manera que da gusto verlo. Pero más me gusta el lado profesional que está teniendo. Y no es fácil estar un año y pico sin jugar y volver nuevamente a jugar, a ser competitivo, a ponerse en línea en otro lugar donde no naciste, donde no creciste, donde tu cultura es diferente, donde el ritmo de juego es diferente, y eso lleva un tiempo. Y creo que ese tiempo lo va caminando bien, va bien. Lo de Carlos había tenido algún problemita físico en la semana, y bueno, entró, ingresó y siempre es peligroso. Carlos siempre saca algo peligroso. Por ahí, en esa dinámica que tiene esta liga, está trabajando para lograr eso, pero una vez que tiene la pelota en los pies, es un jugador diferente. Y los jugadores diferentes van a ser diferentes esta liga. No solamente los jugadores tienen que correr para atrás y para adelante, sino que tienen que saber pasar la pelota.
All right. Thank you very much, Matias and Augustine, and congratulations on the shutout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you hear from Matias Almeyda in his post-match press conference. Joining me again is Jamon Moore to discuss. We will also be speaking with JT Marcinkowski next. And after that, it is Oswaldo Alanis who will be joining us. So stick around for that. I want to recap a couple of things that I picked up from that post-match press conference. The first was just the spectacle, because and we kind of overlooked this at the beginning, I think, Jamon, covering it from the Quakes perspective. But this was the first game at the Q2 Stadium, which is Austin's new stadium. And man, it looked like a gorgeous stadium there. And I think actually this was the first sold out 100% capacity game that the Quakes have had since the beginning of the pandemic, because things are more strict in Santa Clara County at home in San Jose. That hasn't happened yet. It will happen next weekend in the Cali Classico, but this was the first game they've had in front of a packed stadium. And I think that probably also contributed to some of the sort of more stretched out, open, chaotic elements of the game. The other thing that I caught from that post-match press conference was him talking about the new 3-4-1-2 setup. He said that it was something that they had done specifically for this game, and the way that they matched up against Austin, which is suggesting to me it might not be a permanent change. It might just be one of the options that they have. And then he did say, though, that he was happy with the results, that they were making more counterattacks and had more chances going forward. And I think, honestly, that's the most important thing, because the reason the Quakes needed to change is because they were getting pressed by other teams with this sort of accordion press. Other teams were pressing them high up top and then dropping off deep to prevent Cal from having space in behind. And the Quakes just really weren't able to figure out how to play out of the back. And I think with this new formation, whether it's because of the sort of numerical advantages or just because of the chaos and Austin didn't know what to expect, I think both of those things probably contributed. They were able to play out the back, get the ball forward. And then also I think their press was more successful, winning the ball higher up the field in more dangerous places. So Almeyda sounded happy with it. I thought that it looked quite good. Jamon Moore, what do you take away from that press conference?
I think the main thing, I mean, first off, Matias, class as always, talking about the home city and the effort that went into producing the game and talking about the spectacle. We know he's a romantic and he enjoys that aspect of the game. It's the kind of thing that motivates someone like Matias Almeyda. And I think it's good for motivating the players to get back in front of a packed house. And I think, not only the first time they've played in front of a packed house, we really haven't seen it that much in MLS at all yet. The Quakes are going to do their own version of that. The Classico. Yeah, really anywhere, right? We saw 61,000 in the Euros today in Hungary. People were very concerned about that, but I have an employee in Hungary who's been updating me, and they've done an excellent job. Despite the fact that their prime minister is a complete moron and caused a lot of deaths in that country, the one thing he has gotten right has been getting in vaccines and getting people vaccinated. You literally can't go anywhere in the country and almost do anything unless you get vaccinated. That allows you to get 61,000 people into a stadium like that. They had to prove that they were vaccinated in order to enter today. I don't know if that was the case in Austin. Probably, maybe it was not. But it is good to be able to see some things getting back to normal. In terms of Almeyda and kind of his kind of view of the game, I think what he was looking for was that the team was able to kind of take and interpret this kind of new formation in the beginning, look like they were dangerous with it, look like they weren't going to get overrun defensively by it, and overall, it kind of like came out in the wash. And for a first time running out something, I mean, let's be honest, he's been in San Jose now into his third season. This is the first time we've seen a different formation. He's run many different formations in his previous stops. I documented all the different formations that he's done in my article. But this is the first time we've seen it in San Jose. And, it does, again, it shows kind of some tactical flexibility, and it shows he's willing to do what's necessary in order to try to get this team out of this funk. He kind of, said, I had to look inside myself. I had to give them, some kind of way to play out. Now, let's be fair. They didn't get pressed today like they have been getting pressed. In fact, they probably pressed a bit more than Austin did. They showed a front three from a pressing side, and it looked like they were doing a bit more than their normal, just try to like play two in the front and kind of funnel players, forward as they typically do. The flexibility of the new formation, I think, also changed kind of their look from a pressing side, and they were winning balls a bit higher. Now, you have to keep in mind it's Austin, who is one of the worst defenses in the league in terms of expected goals. And then, beyond that, goals conceded, and their attack, while methodical, Josh Wolf, one of Greg Berhalter's former assistants, both at Columbus and for a brief stint with the U.S. national team before he got called into Austin, runs a very Berhalter type system. And, there was the opportunity for the Quakes to somehow get broken down a bit too much. There were moments, but it was never anything that I felt was incredibly dangerous. Anything that JT couldn't handle. Most of the shots went to areas that, he should be able to save and was. A couple surprises in there, but that happens every game. And, overall, I think what Matias can look back and say is, hey, we tried something different. We didn't get run off the field with it. In fact, we were the protagonists for a good part of the game, more so than we have been over the past few games. I think is where he's coming from with that. And again, it's the flexibility of being able to do what he did. And he said, hey, we shifted it again at halftime. We kind of went back to some things that they were more comfortable with, got more control of the game. I think the second half was better for the Quakes overall than the first half. But, it's going to take a little bit getting used to roll out these formations too much. He also kind of stressed that it might have been game specific. Like for this game, we needed to do this. And it might be he saw some things in Austin where he felt that moving to this kind of three in the back system was going to be advantageous. We may not see it again if the situation doesn't call for it, for a little bit. But my guess is that he'll probably want to use it again fairly soon, maybe against a team who's already seen the Quakes, like the Galaxy. That might be an opportune time to be able to throw out a new wrinkle and make the Galaxy, guess a bit more since they've already kind of seen the Quakes already once this season.
Absolutely, Jamon. And not only is it the tactical flexibility in terms of the lineup, I think, but the question you had asked him was about his changes at halftime and the adjustments that he made at halftime, going back to sort of a formation he was more familiar with. It looked like they were playing more with 4 at the back, especially with the subs that they made when Shea Salinas came on. You know, he was dropping a little bit deeper in that left wingback role. Espinosa was putting a little bit higher. The free man was the center back. That's something that more or less they've already been doing. But to me, the key there was that, you know, that's sort of an in-game tactical adjustment that he makes that I think positively affects San Jose's performance. They get more chances going forward. They look more comfortable. They have more possession of the ball. And I think in the past in San Jose, Matias has kind of struggled with those in-game tactical changes. I think oftentimes he's been a little paralyzed, especially in the second half, and he hasn't made changes when he needs to, and he hasn't used subs in the right way. But I think tonight was a great example of a game where I think he managed that very well, especially with the substitutes. You know, bringing on Shea Salinas, Chris Wondolowski, it feels like they have bringing on Shea Salinas and Kate Cowell. It feels like they have sort of a good thing going there, and he has a good sort of grip and understanding of what he needs to do, what buttons he needs to push in order to get this team going.
And one of the things that I wonder is if Paul Marie hadn't been cramping up and needed to come off, Shea Salinas looked pretty dangerous early on running at players. And I really felt like he was potentially going to be able to create a goal either for himself or for somebody else. I mean, if Wando hadn't stopped his run, he was going to find Wando on the back post there. That was a situation. He could have taken the shot himself, but he felt like that if Wando had continued the run, he would have been able to catch him right there on the back post. And that would have been a goal. There were a couple other situations. And unfortunately, once Marie was taken off, he had to drop back. They put on Carlos Fierro, and Carlos didn't bring quite the same level of energy going forward, because Shea was needed defensively there. So, you know, I think like we saw kind of some things also that weren't necessarily in the original game plan and fully intentional. Maybe Fierro would have come on anyway, but it did kind of feel like, the Quakes ended up having to adjust a bit to the situation in the second half. And again, that's good because we've been very critical about Matias and his inability to make adjustments, and other teams, make adjustments at halftime, and all of a sudden, the Quakes are on the back foot, and often, particularly in 2020, we're giving up a goal early in the second half. So it is good that we saw a bit of that flexibility tonight. And honestly, the positional flexibility that is important to him, you see tonight why that is so important in the system. You saw players playing 2 or 3 different positions tonight. Jackson Ewell ended up at the end of the game at the 10. You had Judson that goes from an outside back now to a defensive midfielder. You have Shea Salinas who comes on as a winger, now has to go to outside back. And there's a lot of change that had to happen in that game. JT's coming on now.
Match. Let's go ahead and get started with Alicia Rodriguez.
Thank you, JT. Congratulations on the result tonight and on the clean sheet. I wanted to ask you about that in particular. Your first clean sheet of the season. You made 6 saves. How does it feel to get the stops and to have that kind of put you guys to get a result on the night?
Yeah, I think it's a long time coming. To be honest, I think we've been playing well in the back, and we just haven't really found the clean sheet yet. But it was a really good night to have our first one, and unfortunate not to get more. I thought we deserved a little bit more out of the game, but we'll take the point and kind of all eyes on Orlando now.
Thank you, JT. Next question comes from Jamon Moore.
Hey, JT. Congratulations on the clean sheet and the point.
Thank you.
We talked to Matias a bit about kind of the formation that you guys rolled out to start the game, a different look from you guys, something that you've been working on in practice, he mentioned. At times it looked like it got stretched a bit vertically, but he seemed comfortable with some of those things. From your perspective and kind of trying this kind of, let's call it a 3-5-2 formation, what's your experience with something like that, and how do you feel it went for a first run out, particularly in a packed stadium under these types of circumstances where there's just a ton of energy around you guys, and it's this experience of a packed stadium again for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously things to correct, but overall it was a really good performance from everybody in the back. I thought we shifted well, and like you said, it was hard to communicate, but I thought the guys did a good job of adjusting to a new formation and kind of figuring things out on the fly. Not everything's gonna be perfect, as we've only been really doing it during training, but I think it's something to build off of, and it's something to add to our repertoire. I think we can never have enough tools, and we're going to continue to get better at this system, and we're obviously very good at the other system, and so just more tools to have. And I think there was a level of comfort with it, just having an extra guy in the back and kind of giving those switches and a man covering. But there's definitely things to improve. We'll watch film and go from there.
Thank you, JT. Next question from Alex Morgan.
Unmuted.
Hi, JT. I'm curious how, the three central defenders changes your job as a goalkeeper in building out of the back. I presume you're fairly used to having two center backs, one on either side of you in the build-up. How did the build-up feel tonight, and how does your job sort of change in that setup?
Muted.
I mean, I think there's a little bit of tweaks, but I think having Juice come back there is kind of like he's a center back. You know what I mean? He's a six, and he's a center mid playing there, and so he's obviously very comfortable on the ball. As Waldo and Flo are very comfortable on the ball, and so I think as a group we could have built out a little bit better, but overall I thought when we did, it was really good, and there were some moments where they obviously weren't pressing too high, but when we were getting under pressure, I thought we kind of found some combination with Eric and Jackson in the middle, and we were able to find trophies a lot in kind of the half spaces and the pockets, and so he can turn and kind of do his thing, and that's where he's most dangerous. And so I think that's why we built out of the back in order to stretch the other team and find trophies and find Andy and find Wando in those spaces.
Thank you, JT. We're going to go back to Alicia Rodriguez for one final question.
Thanks again. JT, you guys have a really tight turnaround. You have a game again on Tuesday in Orlando. What's it like when you have such a tight turnaround? I know that you're obviously used to playing on short rest, but this one's kind of exceptionally short. So have the preparations begun, and how do you regen in time to get ready for the next one?
Yeah, a lot of the guys begrudgingly had to get in the ice bath, and so it's going to be a lot of that, a lot of recovery tomorrow. We'll fly to Orlando and have a good session there, have a good session Monday, but it's going to be a lot of recovery massages and recovery boots and all the kind of tools that we have, and we'll be prepared. I'm not worried about it. We're used to playing in 3 days, and we did it a lot last year, and so there's that experience, and Orlando is going to be a really fun game and a great environment and easy to get up for. So all eyes on that, and the guys will be ready.
All right. Thank you very much, JT, and congrats on the shutout.
Thanks, guys.
And there you heard from JT Marcinkowski after San Jose's scoreless draw against Austin FC. Welcoming back Jamon Moore to the stream. Once again, I want to recap a couple things that JT said. First of all, he had talked about the new system and how it was, I think the words that he used were a new tool that they had, a new option that they had to draw from in their toolkit. And so that's sort of, reflecting what Jamie and I were talking about how this might not be a permanent change. This is just one sort of opponent-specific option that the Quakes have. So I think what JT was saying there certainly, made it sound like that. Another thing that you talked about was the buildup and building out of the back. And the thing that, stuck in my mind was, he said the goal was to find trophies. The goal was to advance the ball forward to those midfielders in the half spaces so that they can sort of pivot and carry the ball, move the ball further up the field. And I thought the Quakes did that well tonight. And one of the sort of the impacts that has, I think they did that a couple times in the first half. stretched the game really vertically. Austin were sort of caught off guard. And then Austin stopped pressing as high. They pressed high at the start, but because the Quakes were able to break them down, Austin stepped off, and that gave San Jose center backs the time to sort of possess and control the ball more. And that's super key, right? Is to be able to prevent teams from pressing you that high 100% of the time. If the Quakes had been able to do that against Seattle in some of the other games, if Seattle can't press them as high, if they're able to beat the press, Seattle has to drop off, forcing teams to drop off and play more defensively, giving their center backs time on the ball. I think that's really important for the Quakes, and I'm curious what Jamon Moore has to add to that.
Yeah, it looks like we won't be talking to Oswaldo after all. JT is our only other interview tonight. So, it was. So one of the reasons that I felt that it was really important to switch to the 3 in the back, as I was mentioning before, is that it gives you an extra person, in this case Judson, back to be able to support the build out. And one of the things that the Quakes kept running into was the man press, which effectively was marking out players and forcing JT to play long. By being able to play out early in the game, guess what happened? They stopped it. Why? Because they were going to be able to get caught committing too many men forward. And one of the things I had also complained about is that the Quakes weren't able to find trophies. And again, kind of somewhat solved the problem. It's not the way that I had suggested they solved the problem, but we got a little bit more insight as to why they decided to keep the Enganche 10 rather than the wingers in the formation. And it's to be able to find trophies in those spaces. So now, because you have Judson back there who's able to support and be able to help you play back and give you numerical superiority when you need it, now you can ping the ball around and then be able to switch the point of play and what they call an opposite interior pass to trophies. It switches the point of attack, and it also catches a lot of players out forward. And now the Quakes should have close to even numbers if they're playing against a man press, if they're able to do that. Seems like JT was pretty happy for the most part with how they were able to incorporate that. Now, again, they didn't face quite the same level of a press that they've been facing in other games. I wonder if they're going to face a bit more of one in Orlando City. And Orlando City should know, hey, the Quakes are going to be a bit tired. We probably do want to press them and try to take advantage of that. So I would expect quite a bit more pressure against Orlando City, and I'll be interested to see if Matias decides to counter with another 3 in the back or not.
Jamon, I was seeing a couple comments earlier in the chat about Jackson Ewell. And obviously he just, over the international break, had a huge success with the U.S. men's national team. They won the CONCACAF Nations League. He played most of their semifinal game at the number 6. Looked a little out of place in the number 6, but all in all, I thought he played well. And, if he continues to show up for the national team, that's huge for him. But then he comes back tonight. Maybe there's a little bit of tiredness. Maybe there's a little bit of unfamiliarity with this new system because he wasn't able to train all week and train with this system. But he has another quiet game. And, that partnership with Eric Remedi, I think still looks a little disjointed. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about Jackson Ewell's performance in the middle and what the Quakes need to do to get the best out of him and to get him firing again.
Yeah, just keep in mind he was asked to do things a little bit more up and down tonight than he typically is. He did look a bit more tired by the end of the game. Hard to say if that's because of the national team duty. I would have thought that would have kept him, honestly, a bit sharper now facing players that were not as skilled as the ones that he was having to face previously. But of course, there were a lot of criticisms of him not being progressive enough with some of his passing with the national team. I just feel like Berhalter asked him to play a bit of a different role in the game, but we can agree to disagree with some of the national team fans on that particular point. It's critically important, particularly if we're looking at a situation with Remedi not being available in the next game and Judson being back there. We know that Judson's not as accurate a passer as Remedi is, and thereby a lot more is going to fall on Jackson to be able to support the team and be able to play out through the presses and be able to switch that point of attack. There were some fairly uncontested, easy balls that were missed tonight. There was at least 2 or 3 that I can recall off the top of my head. that he missed. It's critically important that he get that back. And also the same thing for JT Marcinkowski. He was a bit more on tonight, but also he wasn't pressured as much either. And so, they're both going to need to carry that confidence and show that in the next game.
And after this one, as we heard from JT, the Quakes are heading straight to Orlando for a midweek matchup, and then they will head back home to San Jose for the Cali Clasico at PayPal Park. Now, I want to pick out a couple other storylines from tonight, Jamon. The Quakes were playing against three, I think, of their former players, Andrew Tarbell in goal, and Nick Lima, particularly at fullback. Danny Husen is also playing for Austin FC, but it looked like he was sidelined tonight. Nick Lima, I think he had a shot early on, but didn't really look like he did much else. What do we think? The Quakes got the better end of that trade, Jamon?
Yeah, I think there were some questions earlier. We had definitely talked about this toward the beginning of the season, the preseason. Nick Lima was discontented with the club. The way that if you read between the lines effectively, he kind of blamed Matias for him losing his spot with the national team. And, he never fully integrated back into the squad other than a few games, back at the right back last year, never looked comfortable at the left back position. I think overall the Quakes caught him, actually try to move him at probably the best moment they could have for the maximum value that he's going to have. I think at this point in his career, we've seen kind of the upside of it. And, there's probably going to get a good couple seasons out of him in Austin. But I think we've seen the max ability at this point for Nick Lima. And I don't think there's a reason to see him back in the national team side, no matter what he thinks Matias did to mess that up.
Well, there you go. A canny piece of business from Almeyda in the front office. Looking forward to more potential transfers, Jamon. There was some rumors flying around in the Twitterverse this week about a possible new center back signing from San Jose. Obviously, they have been targeting a center back for a long time. Quite frankly, it should have happened in the winter transfer window. Jesse Fiorinelli has been promising a new DP signing for a while now. Maybe with the roster mechanics, it doesn't end up being a DP. Maybe it's a high-level TAM player at this point. But regardless, he's been promising sort of a difference maker. And we didn't get one over winter. I think he sort of kicked the can down the road, and he said, for sure, we're going to build on the team and add that player this summer. And finally, it looks like there are some rumors with the transfer window opening early in July. Jamon, why don't you talk us through those rumors and who the Quakes might be adding at the back?
Yeah, Brazilian player, and Alex, you hit the connection on the head, so I'll let you kind of mention the connection to the club here because you get credit for that. But the main thing here is that he's a center back that can play either side. He's right-footed, but apparently has played a bit more on the left side, I would say. So far for FC Zurich. His name is Nathan, I believe it's Cardoso. But again, he's Brazilian, so he really just kind of goes by Nathan. But if you want to look him up on Transfer Market or any other source, Nathan Cardoso will probably help you sort him out from all the other Nathans out there. He's 6'2". Looks like he probably would be a help on set pieces. That was one of the things that Jesse Fiorinelli was looking for in this type of player. And again, he can play either side, so I guess that flexibility is attractive. But another right foot, I would suspect that even though he's played a bit more on the left side for FC Zurich, that he's going to be competing more with Flo Youngworth. And hey, if the team is going to play more of the three in the back, maybe he'll be an option at that center spot, or maybe he will be best suited to the right. And so we know a bit about him. We put out about a 15-minute clip of him on Quakes Epicenter Patreon. So anyone who is one of our super subscriber or Never Say Die patrons, that's $5 or $15 patrons, should be able to access that video, be able to see 15 minutes of him playing in a loss. We don't put the highlights out there. We let you see how the player really plays. So 15 minutes in a loss on the road, and get a good sense for what he brings to the table. Alex, again, you broke a bit of news in terms of his connection to the club, which makes this seem like it's a pretty good rumor because there is a club connection. Why don't you go ahead and fill everyone in on that?
Yes, so Nathan's brother, Victor, played for Reno 1868 a couple of years back, very briefly in 2018. And so that is a connection to San Jose, to the San Jose organization, that I think makes this rumor realistic, makes it make sense. Now, the last transfer that the Quakes had from the Swiss League was Francois Affelter. He was another center back, and that turned out very poorly. So I'm not super optimistic about Nathan, but I'm glad to see that there are some rumors going on, some buzz happening. If anything, that just shows that when the Quakes are doing the scouting, they're doing this outreach to try to make stuff happen. And I wouldn't be entirely surprised. I don't think it's out of the picture that somebody somewhere on the line is putting this rumor out there in order to get some fans excited and show that they're doing that work, even if it's not going to be the player that happens, just to show that they are doing that scouting. And so I want to throw it back to you, Jamon, before we wrap up here for some final thoughts about tonight's scoreless draw with Austin, and any thoughts that you have heading into Quake's next match against Orlando midweek.
Yeah, let me also quickly throw out that the secondary transfer window opens on July 7. So don't look for a signing to happen immediately. Any signing that'll happen cannot be announced until after that date. Again, if we get better rumors, we'll be sure to share it with everyone. And we always try to hit our patron Slack first and foremost, because we really appreciate the people who are our patrons and come into the Slack and spend time with us and chat, because we get to share things with each other there. So if you're interested in staying on top of the rumors, again, you can check out our Patreon at quakesepicenter.com. Click the Patreon link, read about why we have a Patreon, and consider subscribing. Even $2 a month is a huge help to us. And for $5, you can get in on the Slack and get other benefits, such as the videos of prospective players and things like that we just talked about. We'll try to cut some video from tonight's match so that we can get a better look at it. I think this one's going to need a bit of a watch back, Alex, just because, again, we were looking at something different. My video actually cut in and out a bit in the first half, so there's about 5 minutes or so I need to catch up on and kind of see what happened during that time frame. But in my in-laws' basement, by the way, so that would explain why we were cutting in and out of it. So yes, someone mentioned the mattress earlier, and yeah, that's not going to be part of the normal set, I would say. But a lot of people on vacation right now. But it's exciting to see something different, and I feel good after talking with Matias and JT that, hey, like JT said, this is another tool that they have now. Now they've got two different systems that they can go with. They can even change intra-game, as we saw tonight, and they can start different ways. I think it's a great way to get people onto the field. We did see some people talking about things like, where's about Saeed Haji? Why isn't Cade Cowell starting? There's still some things that can be done here, and they didn't get the goals tonight. And I think it is important to take a look and look down that bench a little bit more. And is Saeed Haji someone who can come on, give someone a bit of a break, on short rest, and try to give the team a bit of an attacking boost? I think people were really excited about what they've seen of him. Now, just a caution to everyone, careful what you wish for, because, one of the reasons that we don't see much of him is because he's been considered by Matias to be a bit of a defensive liability, and that's something that they've been trying to get him, better and better at. So you don't want to see him come on and be the reason that the Quakes give up a couple goals either. But we would like to see. I want to see some rotation in the next game. I think it's going to be a bit forced, based upon the yellow card accumulation situation. But I would like to see a different starting look than we got tonight, and it's quite possible that Matias has already had that in mind, already planning his rotation, understanding these games are going to be a bit back to back. And what we saw tonight just is the first of a couple, and we're going to see something different on Tuesday. I guess we'll find out on Tuesday. Other than that, I felt good that, hey, finally we got a clean sheet to talk about, and they did it with a lot of change going on. They were able to hold on to it on the road against a team that had a lot of momentum with a big home crowd in their brand new stadium and a lot going for them, and to be able to kind of spoil that a bit with a draw, I thought was what was pretty good from the Quakes tonight.
Yeah, I think there are good draws and there are bad draws, and I'm more optimistic about this one as well, Jamon. I thought it was important to stop the slide after their 4 consecutive losses, and I thought it was a good experiment, and good to see that Matias Almeyda had another tool in his tool belt, as he said. Before we wrap up, briefly, I want to plug the Patreon again, just because there was so much written content on there this week out of Quakes Epicenter. We had an article from Jamon at the top of the week about San Jose's best banger goals in the TAM era, breaking that down with some stats. We had an article from Asher about how the Quakes can start scoring again. So if you watch this match, watch the scoreless draw and go, I don't know what's gonna happen, how the Quakes can start doing things in the final third and getting dangerous again, which in fact is exactly what Ben is saying in this comment. He doesn't see how they can be dangerous in the final third. I would go read Asher's article because he breaks down 2 or 3 specific things that the Quakes can do to start turning it around up top. And then the article that you have to read is Jamon's article from last night, because he predicted this formation change. He said that the Quakes should go to a 3 at the back system because that would help with the building out of the back. That's basically exactly what happened. So I encourage everybody to read that to get sort of a sense of why the 3 at the back is helpful, the ways in which it changes San Jose's system. And then the other article that was there was from
Ana's article. And
Jamon's about to jump in here because he knows how good it was.
That's a really good article, and he worked on that for, oh my goodness, I'm sure he put a couple 100 hours into that article. It's a labor of love. He's had this idea for a while, and he was really excited to be able to do it. So if you've not, that article is now free to read for everyone. Check it out. It's about Almeyda and Bielsa, their relationship. And also a bit about what's the same and what's different about the systems, and it helps you kind of understand where Matias Almeyda is coming from. Of course, that goes on the heels of Asher's article earlier in the season, which is a must-read, of course, in terms of the protagonist soccer philosophy. And I think those 2 articles go into the pantheon of kind of the Mount Rushmore of Quakes Epicenter articles, particularly along with Colin's article about Wando. So maybe there's room for one more. We'll see who gets it, Alex. Maybe you and I have something we got to work for here.
I feel like I got to step up my game now, Jamon. So
you also have an article too. Why don't you tell everyone about yours?
I did. A couple weeks ago, I published an interview with Diego Luna, who is a former Quakes Academy player. He left the Quakes Academy in 2019 to go to the Barca Residency Academy in Arizona. He played alongside Caden Clark there and Bryce Duke as well. Those are 2 young players who are succeeding in MLS. And Diego is now on fire in the USL. He has, I think, 2 goals and an assist in his first 3 starts for El Paso Locomotive in the USL. And I talked to him about his journey, about playing at the Quakes Academy. And he was one of the young players considered for a homegrown deal. So I encourage everybody to check that article out. Everybody who is a Patreon, who contributes to our Patreon, gets early access to all those articles and a bunch of other perks as well. So thank you guys again for supporting us. Everybody who is a patron, a shout out here from Marcelo saying it makes the space in between games way nicer, especially with that long international break. John J also saying he reads our articles. We appreciate you, John. My last thought. You're
not going to skip over the Alex's now, that first name basis with Almeyda, because tonight he gave you the hey Alex. I've never gotten hey Jamon. So kudos to the first name basis now with Almeyda.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure if he'll recognize me when we go back in person because it's been so long since we've all been in the stadium together. But that was a fun moment for sure. I want to say that one other highlight, Jamon, that I had from tonight, and the one thing that jumped out to me was Tommy Thompson's new haircut. This is a fun one. You saw the man bun there for the first time, Jamon. That was another new wrinkle in this team that we hadn't seen before.
So Cade Cowell has a new haircut too.
Yeah, they've got the flow. They've all got the flow, rocking it. So on that fun note, we thank you all for joining us in another episode of the Aftershock. We'll be with you again after San Jose's midweek match Tuesday night in Orlando City against the Orlando City team. And we will see you then. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for all your comments tonight, everyone. Have a good night.